Greetings, Culture Warriors. This is Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and your host for this Dispatch from the Front. Today's story, this comes to us from Entrepreneur Magazine, authored by Alex Lazarov, and its headline, During Uncertain Times, Your Startup Should Be a Camel, Not a Unicorn. Here's how to be prepared. Camel startups survive because they prepare for the worst, and even companies in more secure markets have a lot they can learn from camels as they prepare for the unexpected. As Monica Brandengle, the co-founder of Quona Capital, a leading emerging market investment firm, once quipped, "Break even is the new black." This not only is a smart strategy in places with scarce venture capital, but also it can mean the difference between survival and failure in the event of a severe shock. Camel startups control costs and change fair value for their products so that their growth is built on a fundamentally sound footing. These two elements keep camel startups within a stone's throw of sustainability and make for responsible growth. Because growth is controlled and the bottom of the cost curve is not nearly as steep for camels as for growth at all cost unicorns, they can elect when to raise capital. Some companies like MailChimp and Basecamp chose not to take any venture capital at all. While this is not an argument against venture capital, full disclosure, I am a venture capitalist, camel startups realize they can choose whether, from whom, and on what terms to raise venture capital. The smartest camel startups raise capital with a particular growth strategy in mind and raise only the amount they need. Camel startups anticipate various crisis scenarios, communicate their plan to investors, and take action when required. Look at Zuna, a mobile money company in Zambia. Keith Davies, co-founder, invested in a detailed financial model that forecasts many economic drivers based on the vibrancy of Zuna's financial service booths, as well as the resulting cash needs of the business under multiple scenarios. Looking back at an episode in 2016 when the currency crisis hit and the Zambian kwacha devalued more than 70%, as Davies explains it, we were able to understand with confidence and show our investors and partners a range of potential outcomes and how our business would fare in each. When the currency crisis hit, Zuna acted fast. It assessed the impact of the massive devaluation on the business and then called investors and made a plan of action, including right-sizing the company, slowing investment, and modulating various costs. As a stopgap, the company received a small capital injection and actively tracked the evolving situation. In case one part of the business takes a severe hit, camel startups have other strategic options they can turn to. Often, this means diversifying from a product, geography, or client perspective. In Silicon Valley, startups operate like mosquitoes, having a singular focus. Camel startups often take a more financially sound strategy, reflective of the complexities of their ecosystems, by building diversification into their product mix. Vision Spring, a global social enterprise that offers eyeglasses to the poor, has three business lines: sales to wholesalers, sales through intermediaries, and direct sales in partnership with local nonprofits for distribution. It is active in 6 markets. This effectively means that there are 18 businesses, each at a different level of maturity and scale. The more mature ones support the others, and if one suffers, the others remain. Yet the portfolio approach can go too far. One of the reasons Silicon Valley advises against this strategy for startups is that building fast-growing companies is extremely difficult and requires a massive amount of effort and dedication. Building one startup is demanding enough. Being spread too thin across multiple projects is a recipe for mediocrity in each. Therefore, the lesson should not be about building diversification for its own sake, or in a haphazard manner. Rather, it is about building a portfolio strategically and when necessary. Naturally, there are no secrets in business of creating successful startups, and chance plays a factor in everything. However, camel startups plan for uncertainty, and in doing so, increase the likelihood they will survive in the long term. Okay. It's getting a little depressing how poorly written some business articles are. And part of it seems to be that whomever is writing it may not have a lot of knowledge about the area in which they're writing. And so they're kind of glossing over things. not a lot of coherence there. So we have to do a little more heavy lifting from an analytical standpoint. What is it we're trying to get at with a Camel startup? And I think the answer is we want a startup which is built for resilience. We want a startup that, because by its nature, those early years of the startup are going to feature a lot of uncertainty. You want a startup that's a little more conservative, that is not going to fall off a cliff chasing opportunity. I would put this another way. I would say that the lesson of business, particularly modern business, is that cash equals life. And what I mean by that is that if your business is struggling to make basic payroll, to pay bills, as so many are, especially in this time, then you're not really built to last. You have got to first concentrate on obtaining and growing a cash cushion, which will allow you to weather some of these storms and also to take advantage of some opportunities. They kind of glanced at some things in this book, in this article about venture capital opportunities. Yes, generally the cost of capital is cheaper. The better record you have less need for it, the more cash you have. So keeping your overall portfolio down in terms of the amount of money you owe others is very helpful. You probably need some, especially early on, just to to keep reaching for more growth. Also, the more cash that you have, then if the unexpected happens, such as a global pandemic requiring the unprecedented shutdown of your business, you can withstand that shock longer because you have cash on hand. Moreover, the more cash you have, the fewer of your lenders that you have to make unhappy. So if things get tight, you don't have to withhold payments, which is only going to come back on you later in terms of greater cost or in terms of lower priority for those companies. Rather, you can kind of ride it out. But it takes tremendous discipline because, of course, there are always things to invest your money into. In my most recent role, I managed the capital expense portfolio for a company that was growing pretty rapidly. But they realized that they could no longer invest based on, whomever kind of made the best request, if you will. They had to be more strategic in how they were funding the operation. And then, of course, this hits, this pandemic, and then the answer was just don't spend any money until we're out of this. But they recognized, hey, we need to put a little rigor, a little discipline here. We need to make it a little bit harder to spend $1 than it is to make $1. And if we do that, then we'll start building up our cash. That is a wise strategy for any business to follow. Sometimes we get so enamored of opportunity that we throw money at chasing it. You get a chance to really make a big hit with a big box retailer. And so then you start saying yes to things you shouldn't say yes to. And it just creates problems for you over the long haul. So it is wise advice, I think, for any business really, to think of themselves as the camel beginning a journey across the desert rather than just kind of running after every mirage and assuming that there's going to be water at the end of it. It's wise advice. The companies that survive this mess are going to be skewed towards camel companies, and the folks that were more like squirrels are probably not going to make it through this drought. And that's just a fact of life. So when constructing your company's values, it is a very good thing to keep in mind how we will maximize cash. Is it through productivity? So we get a little bit better year over year over year and we self-fund some things so that we don't have to dip into our cash? Maybe. Is it a financial conservatism that keeps us from taking on too much debt, unbalancing our balance sheet, and creating ticking time bombs all around us? Is it a focus on customer value, on the assumption that the cash will be there as long as the value is there? Whichever values you choose to emphasize, connecting the dots between that value and the impact on your cash is the key to being a camel in the desert. Thank you and have a great day.